Hey everyone, this is Shutter Studios and I am Max. And today on the How-To Handbook, we're going to be filming an episode on how to make a music video, or more specifically, how to direct one. We'll look into how to work with the artist, finding inspiration for locations, and what you'll need to shoot one. Ultimately, we'll have the musician in mind when directing this music video. Alright, so the main content of the music video. First comes initial communications. This is probably one of the hardest parts because you're trying to meet artists. They often don't even want to talk to you, but ultimately, the musician or the artist are going to be the most important part of your video, especially in this part of the process. The videos are basically an extension of an artist's own art, and they can be very particular with how it translates to a screen. So many artists go in with a specific vision, others are more flexible, some kind of just give you creative direction. But you ultimately want to talk about that and make sure that your goals are aligned for that. If you can properly dictate a story that fits their vision, then you can get away with putting in massive amounts of creative direction. And don't overcomplicate it with production jargon. That's just going to make your life more difficult. Keep it to the artist level. Next, we have discussing expectations. Now, storytelling can come in many formats, some of which can be written or picture or video, or even performance or audio, say if you're doing a podcast. But since we're dealing with video and audio, you have to ask the question, what is the story of the music? How is it told in a music video? And what are the core themes of the music? This all falls under the pre-production phase. So let's get into that. First, you start your meeting with the artist. You talk about the concept, talk about the idea. This can be a long process, so make sure you got some coffee. But also, you got to get a good idea of what the artist is both working with and looking for. Also take note that you should know the song like the back of your hand. I usually sit down with the song on like a looper, listen to it for like 30-40 minutes and just brainstorm for those 30-40 minutes. And honestly, most of my best ideas have come out of just that brainstorming session. Think of this like the research period a reporter does before interviewing a subject. You don't want to go in with no knowledge because you're not going to ask the right questions. Finding visual references for other music videos, films, paintings, etc. can also make it go much smoother and much faster. This is just because the artists don't always know exactly what they're looking for or exactly what they need, but they know what they want. And hey, if the artists don't want to go the way you envision, that's totally fine, but now you know the song really well. Expectations take me to my next point, negotiations. In a creative setting, this can often be neglected because it's honestly the more business side. It's not always as fun as the creative side, but you must know your work, you must know your worth, and to go into this process, you have to have complete confidence. Negotiations are not just about pricing either, but this is a major component. When you account for labor, design, gear, locations, etc., videos become very costly very quickly. I know it's hard to believe, but filmmakers have to eat too. So, that being said, after you account for expected expenses, you gotta expect non-expected expenses that can come out of pocket. These can be things such as if like the client wants to stay later than you expected, move locations, add in extra props, go out for a meal. These can incur small costs, large costs, but you don't have to have the perfect formula for it yet. You just have to talk with the artists and basically say, hey, things can possibly come up and incur extra cost. I just want you to know that. I don't know exactly what this will be, but it could happen. Another massive part of negotiations is the timeline. You want to discuss whether you're going to give this to them the next day, 3 days, next week, 3 weeks, a few months, because if they expect 2 months, they're not going to be mad when it takes 2 months. But if they expect 2 weeks, they're going to be pissed when it takes 2 months. So give them a realistic expectation and under-promise, but over-deliver. Tell them more time than you think you're going to need. What I like to say in negotiations is that I will shoot no less than 2 weeks out from the initial negotiation and no less than 3 weeks of post-production. This can be shortened or lengthened based on scope of the project, if they pay for a quicker edit, various things. But That's generally a good rule of thumb. One last thing to think about in negotiations is contracts. It's not the most important when you're very first beginning, but it is something to think about as you scale your production. In business law, it's commonplace that oral contracts under $500 are binding, but past this point, I do heavily recommend a simple bilateral promise contract. Literally can just say, you'll pay me this much if I do a job, and I'll do the job if you pay me that much. Something kind of like that. There's plenty of templates online. Look it up if you're trying to scale your production. Next, forming your crew. Once you know the scope, you must form your crew. If it's a crew of one, great. Pack your bags, but if not, you gotta find people and you gotta trust them. It's like the Avengers. How does Nick Fury put together a team, or Iron Man if you're particular? I think it was Iron Man. A crew is needed to help with any size shoot, but often, and especially when you're starting out, it's gonna be small and you'll be wearing many hats. Now, with that being said, the makeup of a usual mid to low range film crew is usually the following: director, cinematographer / videographer. They can also do BTS if need be, and lighting people. So that can be the same person as your AC, different person, depends on the scale of your production. A costumer and or hair and makeup stylist. This again can be one of the other people or even you, but based on the scale of your production. And lastly, production assistants. Do not disrespect your production assistants. They will save your life. You do not know how hard it is to lug gear around and how much easier it is with production assistants until you have them. Respect your production assistants. Finding and getting locations. This is one of the most vital parts of pre-production because it's one of the most vital parts of production. The location of the music video is important in a couple ways. The first being that it helps shape the music video, obviously, but also you gotta factor in, will it make it more difficult to shoot in this space? Will it make it easier to shoot in this space? Is it outdoors? Is there a possibility of storming? Are you shooting in a minimalist office space for a high energy video? Maybe that doesn't jive well. There are some videos that are an exception to this rule, but one thing I like to say is you must first learn the rules in order to break them. Will this location limit my camera shooting space if it's like tight cubicles? Is there outlets? Are there a lack of windows so you would have to do extra lighting? These are all just things to think about. The second location of a music video can also be determined by the budget outlined. Fees for securing a location can range anywhere from free if you're guerrilla filmmaking to thousands and thousands of dollars. Depends on where you're going, but do your best to film nearby if possible. You can even just film the exterior of your previous indoor scene or vice versa if need be. Remember, more locations equals more time, and more time equals more money. This is especially true for shoots with long run times. Just think, is there a purpose for the location, or do you just think it's cool? Be pragmatic and resourceful. Speaking about proximity of locations, you must also factor in travel time when thinking about cost. Usually, for a rule of thumb, I put in 50 free miles there and back for entire travel for shooting day and any kind of pre-production for shooting. But then after that, I put in 65 cents per mile, and anything after 5 hours is additional fees, and so on. You don't have to be perfect about this. You could just be like, hey, pay for my gas. It depends on how you would like to do it. So make your own system that works for you. Next, you have to cast the talent. This is often just the artists themselves, but if you need extras or you need a cast, you can always just ask friends and family to be in it. They often just find this fun, and they're free, so it's budget friendly. Next, renting or buying equipment. Generally, buying equipment is a lot more expensive in the short run, but in the long run, it becomes a lot cheaper, obviously. The average equipment cost for a music video can range anywhere from the lowest budget of $500 or even less if you're shooting on a DSLR you already own, up to hundreds of thousands of dollars for large camera rigs, large lighting rigs. It really just depends on what budget you have and what's your scope. Camera equipment can range anywhere from $500 to $5,000 per day to rent, lighting gear $200 to $2,000, Sound equipment, 100 to 2,000, and crew fees, 200 to 1,000 per day. These are rough estimates, but the costs vary a lot based on location, needs, production quality, and your expertise. Next, you have to make a production plan. The production plan is a Bible of sorts. This helps you lay out the shoot as well as the schedule for the day. This is one of the most important parts of pre-production because it makes sure that your production goes smoothly, you stay on time, and you get everything that you need. The order of the plan is as follows. Make a shot list and or a storyboard. I like doing both on larger productions, but music videos don't always need it. A schedule. This can be a shooting schedule where you plan out your shots based on your shot list, or this can be a schedule based on when people come in, locations, etc. Just create some form of schedule that can kind of tell you, are you running ahead, are you running behind, are you right on time? You just want to know that metric on the shoot. Next, an AV script. We'll have a video coming out for this soon, so stay tuned. But this is basically how to plan out where shots will go with what lyrics of the song, and it's basically like a pre-edit before you even shoot anything. It's very useful for the artist to see, and they often love seeing it. It gives them a little bit of a taste of what will happen in the edit before you even shoot. Now, moving on to production. Now, I think this is the most fun part of production. I think a lot of filmmakers feel this way. But don't get overzealous. There's still a lot of work to do. During this part, we'll be creating the music video. You finally met with the artist, you've talked about the concept, and you compiled your assets. So this means that you've crafted a schedule, a shot list, and this is where you make sure to follow the schedule and the shot list to a T. Make sure you get the most important and hardest shots done first, and if you want to add shots later, do those last when you have extra time. Because I promise it'll hurt you if you add too many shots. I've done it too many times. Also expect to deal with unforeseen challenges such as actors showing up late, rain, cars passing by, etc. There's a lot you can't expect, but a lot you will have to deal with. Post-production. After production, if you have an AV script, this will help you quite a bit because you're able to follow that in the edit. If the artist has a specific vision, you can have them sit in with you. Otherwise, you can give them base versions of the edit and give them a template, which we will also have a video about soon, to do corrections based on the timestamp of the video. This will make it so the artist can give direct and clear feedback to you and you can process it in a timely manner. Also, make sure to stick to a schedule that you had promised the artist. If you don't, you could lose a client, you could lose a connection. Be timely. Next, here are some tips that may help you directing your music video. Tip number 1, communicate clearly. You'll be working with a crew, and when you're developing a music video of any scope or any size, there will be a lot of moving factors that could break your shoot if you let them. Not having a clear line of communication can cause all sorts of issues and make the set and make the final product not come out how you intended. Make sure to share your vision with the team and make sure everyone, the talent, the crew, the artist, are all on the same page during the shoot. This often just means small briefings throughout, and make sure to do a briefing in the beginning and a post-wrap briefing to make sure that you got everything before you go away and can no longer continue to shoot. This has happened far too many times. Tip number 2, focus on performance. Work closely with the talent throughout the duration of the shoot. A music video can't be its most authentic self without the artist, regardless of the context of the video. Have talks with the artist about what they had in mind for performance, and work with each other to make sure each shot is better than the last. Tip 3, be flexible. Be adaptable. Things will always go wrong on set, no matter if you're the scale of Disney, if you're just a one-man crew, things will go wrong. Being able to think on your feet can help keep the flow of the production moving. You can't let a setback derail your production. Stay adaptable and genial with your crew as well. They also likely deal with numerous challenges, and you just have to check in with them and make sure you're communicating well. Tip number 4, prioritize key shots. We already spoke about this, but if you have shots that are important, get them out of the way first. Do those, and then if you have extra time, you can add shots later. Tip 5, experiment with angles. Now this can be done in pre-production where you can expect to experiment, or if you just have a flat shot, maybe you add a slight tilt, maybe you do a slight upward angle, slight lower. You don't have to overcomplicate it. but just add a little bit of visual interest, a little bit of visual spice in there. It can make all the difference. Today, at Shutter Studios, we've talked about working with musicians and understanding storytelling, what to look for in a location, the steps to be able to shoot, and a little bit of post-production. We've gone over directing a music video and what to expect. Here's some takeaways. You've learned different parts of a music video and what it asks for. Directing a music video is a long and tedious process, but it can also be very rewarding. You just have to take into account some unexpected things, some expected things, and take them one at a time. Try not to get overwhelmed, because it can be a lot at first. Lastly, remember to add your own touch and stay unique. Like we say here at Shutter Studios, go against the grain. If you liked our video, subscribe to learn more about filmmaking, running a production studio, and if you want to watch some original work. And if you want to learn more about pre-production, production, or post-production, we will have more videos coming out soon. They'll be linked in the description. Thank you again. I'm Max Butler at Shutter Studios, and I'll see you next time on the How-To Handbook.